Hey, Brentwood.Church, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Peter Johnson. I am the Arts and Media resident here at Brentwood.Church, and I'm here with Teresa Hesch. And Teresa Hesch is our Director of Lay Counseling here at Brentwood.Church. I said that correct, right?
Yes, you did.
Great, perfect, awesome. But yeah, she is here to talk with me a little bit about our upcoming series that we're starting this Sunday called Even When It Hurts. Now, with this series, we're going to be covering 3 topics specifically each week. First, starting with anxiety, and then we're going to go into depression, and then we're going to talk about suicide. And not that this is any more important or any like separate thing from any of our other series, but we do feel very passionate about this series because we are talking about some very heavy stuff that affects people that we love dearly, and even a lot of us that come here to Brentwood, and a lot of us that might be watching this video. And it's topics that shouldn't be taken lightly. So we want to make sure that as we're going through this series here as Brentwood.Church, we want to be able to provide everyone that is in attendance, everyone that follows us on our social media, that goes to our website, whatever it be, to be able to be more informed about anxiety, depression, and suicide, to be able to know what to do if someone they love struggles with it, what to do if they're struggling with it and they don't know how to express that to people, a bunch of different things. And we figured the best way to do that is to bring our expert in, bringing Teresa in to talk about a couple of those things. So Ken, just real quick, I know that this wasn't one of the original questions, but I think it'll help everyone kind of understand a little bit more about how we do counseling at Brentwood. So can you talk about kind of what the counseling process looks like at Brentwood.Church?
It's very easy. All you have to do is put in an application for counseling through our website, and then immediately within a 24-hour period, I get back with them with an email to say, hey, listen, I want to talk to you a little bit. This helps me as the director of the program to make sure that we're providing the best possible care we can for you, and to make sure that we as a program can help, because not only do we have a great program at the lay counseling at Brentwood, but we also have great community resources for people as well.
That's good. That's good. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in on a couple of the different things that we want to be able to provide everyone watching with when it comes to dealing with anxiety, depression, and suicide. So Teresa, first, what I want to ask you, and this is something that a lot of people question, especially as followers of Jesus. Is it a sin to struggle with either anxiety, depression, or suicide?
No, it's not a sin. But get this scenario. You have somebody coming into church who is not feeling that great. And here we are, we're smiling, we're happy, we're raising our hands to song and worship. And yet when you walk into church, all of a sudden you're not feeling that way. You feel a little disconnected. You feel like your mind is sluggish. You feel like either that or you're anxious, and you don't even, just to get to church is an issue to get to church. And so it is really hard for somebody that is struggling with depression and anxiety and even some intrusive suicidal thoughts to be able to come into church and then wonder, what is wrong with me that everybody else seems to be able to, and just enjoy and engage in life, and yet I am like in the back, and I just don't know how to do that. So what ends up happening is they think, okay, is it my faith? So what happens is they decide that they're going to doubt, and it leads to isolation, which can lead to suicide. And so it's really hard for people to want to force themselves to engage. So what ends up happening is a lot of people will, give them some Bible verses, or what ends up also happening is that they decide that they need to, I need to read the Bible more. But yet those things don't always connect well because they're feeling so isolated from God and from others. We also come from a society that with Facebook and all this other thing, Instagram, that we have a more connected society really than any we've ever had. Yet people are feeling more lonely than they ever had. I swear that Facebook, or what I like to call Fakebook, is something that just it is the enemy's use to be able to compare ourselves and knowing that we're failing. And that is one way that we can do that. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm 56 years old now, but sometimes I'm on Facebook, I feel like I'm a 16-year-old again. And so you're way back in high school now, not feeling like you're feeling connected or measuring up to people.
That's really good. I love that concept of we're the most connected like culture, most connected generation ever,
Yeah,
and yet it's still crazy that we've never felt more alone.
that's
So
right.
that's so wild.
Hmm.
Um, so another question that I would have for you: would you say it is okay for someone to take medication if they are struggling with either anxiety, depression, or suicide?
Hmm. Because mental illness, such as anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts, many of that is a stigma in church when we talk about mental illness and what that means. And so Christians automatically think medicine, no, my faith should be enough. I believe in God, I go to church, I read the Bible, I'm in study, I'm in community. This should be enough for me. And so when that doesn't happen, people get stuck and they get in bondage when they realize that there's medicine. High cholesterol, we take medicine for it. Diabetes, we take medicine for it.
Mm-hmm.
We do that readily and have no problem actually doing it. We understand that there's a family history. You may not be heavy or whatever, you may not do anything, but your family history just says you need the meds, you got to
Mm-hmm.
take the meds. And this is what my doctor wanted. But what happens is that people get so stuck in this that they decide, no, I'm not going to take medicine because that's something else. That's not somewhere I need to go because my faith should be enough. My
Mm-hmm.
Christian walk should be enough. Jesus should be enough for
Mm-hmm.
me. And when it's not, we get stuck. And so it is important for people to talk to your general practitioner about medicine. It's important to maybe go to a psychiatrist to talk about medicine because it may be something that helps. When it's taken appropriately, it helps lift your mood. It helps, tone down those thoughts
Mm-hmm.
that keep rolling around like a marble. Especially if you suffer from anxiety, everybody knows what that anxiety is like. Woo, your head is just spinning around, and you can't even get your thoughts in process. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important to do that because it can help. Because what happens is when people are depressed or they have anxiety, it is something that they can't see any hope or healing.
Mm-hmm.
They get stuck and feel like they're alone in this. And so what ends up happening is that because they feel so alone, they don't see that there is something different for them or a hope or a future for that. And the medicine, when you lift your mood up, just like when the sun after the winter, the spring, everybody starts coming out and you're feeling better about life, it just feels better. You're able to handle things better. You're
Mm-hmm.
able to think clearly. You're able to read and know that you're able to retain what you're reading because depression makes you sluggish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you were talking about in there is, like that thought of being alone
Mm-hmm.
and others being able to see that, especially in a loved one. Like you can see that they feel alone in that. And I have a family member who I love very dearly who struggles with all three of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in many different areas in his life. And one of the big things that I even think about is like I know he feels alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, he's not alone. Like, I want to be there with him,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, like, what do you say to someone? Like, how do you, like, remind someone that you love deeply, that's struggling with either anxiety, depression, or suicide? Like, what do you say to that person to remind them that they're not alone? Or how can you help them not feel as if they're alone?
Yeah. You know what the biggest issue is? That a lot of people are afraid to ask.
Mm,
They're afraid to go there with somebody. They're like even my lay counselors, when they have training, they're thinking, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? What happens with that, And that fear stops us from connecting or moving towards somebody. And so what ends up happening is we stay back instead of going forward,
mm,
which increases their isolation. So what we need to do is just ask.
mm,
Just ask outright questions. I noticed you're not coming to church as much. Is something going on?
mm,
And then follow up with questions. But asking is really important because asking shows you care. And like I tell my lay counselors, you know what? You're going to say something wrong.
mm,
I say things wrong. I do things wrong. I don't always get it right. And that's okay. The fact is love covers a multitude of sins. And if you show love, they will get it.
mm,
They will get it.
mm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So when it comes to like the way that I know that for my family member that they struggle with this is that he actually had a suicide attempt many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and praise God, like that he's still okay,
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
it was a failure and things like that. But my family had no idea that there was struggle there to that extent. And I lost a friend many years ago to suicide, and it was a shock to me. Like, I had no idea that they struggled with that. And I've learned that, at least in my life, I know people who are struggling because they have gotten to the point where they're open about it. But what do you do, or how can you tell if someone is struggling with either anxiety, depression, or suicide, and is either just not vocal about it, or maybe even trying to cover it up, or maybe they are, like showing signs of it, but we're just not like realizing it or connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So like, how can we tell? Like, what are those signs and symptoms, I guess,
Yes.
To see?
It's very important to get educated about it. What is really depression and anxiety? And being able to know if there's a change in behavior, such as eating too much, sleeping too much, sleeping not enough, anxious all the time. You're finding that they're just ruminating on things they don't know. The best thing to do is continuing to ask those questions. A lot of people say, oh, I can't ask, I don't want to, I think maybe they might be struggling with suicide, but I don't want to put that thought in their head. Well, no, ask, are you thinking of committing suicide? Are you thinking of killing yourself? That is important, because what happens is that takes that out of the secrecy of their head and puts it out, and there's a relief there for them. They can now talk about it freely. It's nothing that keeps them in bondage over what's going on in their head, and that's really important. The other piece is that to know what areas that cause a depression and anxiety, which is life changes. Like really big life changes, a divorce, if someone has committed suicide, death of a loved one, a loss of a child, infertility, postpartum depression. You believe it or not, a lot of people that are, have their first child, they look forward to it, they love to have it, and then all of a sudden they're so depressed they can't take care of their little one. And that creates more shame and more feelings of guilt, which make people isolate even more. So to know that if you're going through something like that, this past year has been a heck of a year for us. I'm telling you, it's been a heck of a year. Our friend in August lost their child, who we've known since she was born. We went through that tragedy. My dad fell, hit his head, then died on Christmas Eve. Then we lost Jason Candler, who was in our small group for many years. And then we lost our dog. Plus that, we've also lost, at the law school, we lost one of our beloved professors, lost his wife. And so there was a lot of loss in my life. And so I had good friends that were around me that said, okay, Therese, how are you doing with all this? Because this is a lot to process. And that was wonderful. Just being able to talk and be able to just process through that with somebody was good. And that someone noticed. It's important to connect with people, to know what is going on in their life, so that if they're experiencing, such as a job loss, even something as a perceived loss, such as there's changes at work. I might lose my job, and then I lose the ability to provide for myself and my family, which is huge.
And this question that I'm about to ask is very, this is something I'm very curious about. I really want to know this answer personally. And I feel like a lot of people watching can be in the same vein of knowing a lot of people that struggle with these things, and, like not necessarily having those struggles to that extent as them. So like for me, specifically with anxiety, I know that like I may have a moment of anxiousness, like I have to get a project done at work.
Sure.
Like I'm anxious, like I want to make sure it goes well, hope everything's fine, different things like that. But I've even had the question of like, what does that mean I struggle with anxiety? So how can you tell, or how can you like look at your own life and say, and kind of like decipher in your life if you're struggling with either anxiety, depression, or even suicide?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times what happens is that, especially with anxiety, we all get anxious. I mean,
Right.
everybody has been even depressed on some occasions. You have a dream that didn't come true. You're not going to be able to pursue the career that you wanted to. So you have moments of anxiety. But then once you get that hope, or you go on to something else, it just goes away. We all struggle with that to some degree. But when something becomes pervasive, such as there's really no reason. It's just a generalized anxiety. You're anxious over everything, even making decisions, going outside, going to church, wondering where you're going to sit. I mean, things just continuing, ruminating. You cannot shut your mind down. And that's really difficult. And that's what makes it more pervasive. And so we, as, part of the director of the lay counseling ministry, is part of my job when I see people or talk to people is to determine whether or not this is something that is more situational or more pervasive. And that means looking at family patterns, because you know what? Depression, anxiety, suicide, those things come down from generation to generation. And we have to look at that. Just like anything else, we need to look at the whole person, not just what the situation is they're going through, to make sure that it might be something that will require some medicine, because they're just not operating on all cylinders there.
Gotcha. Now, you've touched on this, and I just want to make sure that we cover all the bases here when it comes to that. So when it comes to, people that go down this road of, pervasive, like studying with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, what are the, like, common storylines and, just thought processes that you see those types of people go through that lead to those different things, are good signs of this is what's happening in their life, that they're struggling with that?
Yeah, there are, some of the common storylines are, like I said before, is that, they're going to be going through a really rough time. What we see a lot for some Liberty students, especially, if there's a breakup. You break up with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and all of a sudden it throws you into a tizzy, and all of a sudden you're not going to class, you're dropping classes. It's a big problem. And so we've recently had some of those storylines where that has been an issue. Also, just people that going through some life changes that just can't seem to get over this hump, where they feel like they my job, I'm not happy in my job, I'm not happy here. We know when we're hitting that happiness thing that, God isn't all about happiness. But the fact is that we know when we're not feeling right about something.
And I think you hit a really good point there, because this almost feels like a counseling session right now, even for me, because when I was at Liberty a couple years ago, like, I was in a season of, like, there was a rough breakup, and like I kept that in, and I definitely went through a point where I was definitely not myself or what I normally am. And looking back on it, I was like, yeah, I went through a very depressional phase right there. And but I would say, and that was around 2015, and that was kind of in the rise of where I noticed, even in college, where, like, counseling was more and more like not a thing where, like, oh, I go to counseling because I'm crazy, or I go to counseling because I have a problem. That stereotype was being shut down.
Yes.
And it was like, no, everyone should just go to counseling because it's good for you. Like, it's good for anyone.
Yeah.
And I wish I had, like, seen that back then. So I think that's huge, because that's a lot of people here at Brentwood are college students. And that's something that, like, I think people need to see, is that, like, it's not stupid that you got dumped. You know what I mean? It's not stupid to feel hurt about that. Like, yes, we're young, like all that type of stuff. But, like, that's a huge emotional, like stress on your life, and a huge change to your life, and things like that. And people should be okay to, like, go to a counselor and, like, talk about those things. If I wanted to learn a little bit more about whether if I struggle with, or I know someone that struggles with either anxiety, depression, or suicide, where would you lead that person to?
Yeah. You know what? There's 3 great books, because there's Unveiling Depression in Women, Unmasking Depression in Men, because men and women deal with depression differently.
Yeah.
And sometimes men deal, you'll find more anger in sometimes men than you will find in women. And you don't realize that anger really is because they're depressed, or there's something going on. And then there is the Anxiety Cure, which is great. We have a little booklet, I think, that we're going to be giving people out on Sunday. It's going to have a lot of more information in there for you. It'll have some, a lot more resources for you to go to, but it's wonderful. And there's a lot of checklists online to say, okay, are you struggling with this and this? And you know what? If you're struggling with all those and you're checking them off, it's probably a good idea to talk to somebody. But that's the key, is to talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Because to keep it hidden doubt and isolation is where the enemy gets us.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is the church has Christ, and that means he gives us security, connection, and freedom rather than bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have to offer and to give for people for hope and healing.
That's super good. And what Teresa mentioned there is so true. We are giving out a handbook for the series of Even When It Hurts, which is going to have so much information regarding those three topics. And that's how serious that we're taking this series. Like, it's more than just a series of, like, get friends to come so that way they can hear about Jesus. Like, this is something that I was a part of helping decide where we were going with this series, and just creatively. And it was one of those things that everyone that's been behind this, we are so passionate about, this is where culture is right now. And this is the thing that the church needs to be talking about. And we here at Brentwood are, stepping up to that call and challenge to talk about those things boldly and to explore those things and continue, as Teresa does, as Teresa leads, to help people in our church that are struggling with those things. And as we're pretty much done here, is there anything else, like just off the top of your head, as we're about to dive into this series, that you just want to mention, even if it's the heart of what you feel behind the series and how important it is, or just anything else? The floor is yours.
I love the idea that this series is coming in, because it is going to blow the stigma of what we consider anxiety, depression, and suicide, what it is, and how to help. We feel so surprised by that when people feel this way, but the fact is we have in the Old Testament. I mean, look at Abraham, Moses, Joseph. We have wonderful examples, biblical examples of people feeling this way. But for some reason in our culture today, it's not okay to express that and feel that. We want this culture at Brentwood, which I think we're seeing over and over again, that connection, and be able to say, I struggle and it's okay. It's important. Most of my lay counselors all have struggled with something over the time, and yet they've come through it. It is one of my when I do training, it's one of my things. It's a fine line between which side of the desk we actually belong on, and that's okay, because that is someone that knows what you're going through and that can journey with you and follow through with you.
That's great. And when just kind of one last thought before we conclude this and get ready to dive into the series. This series, as we've said multiple times, is so important, and I believe, and we as Brentwood.Church believe, that God is going to do some crazy things in the lives of everyone that are attending and the people that we love, and we want to make sure that is taken so seriously. So my challenge is prayer starts here. If you're watching this video right now, start praying now. If you're struggling with these things and you want to begin to experience growth and healing in that, pray for your next steps right now. But if you know someone that's struggling with either anxiety, depression, or suicide, I encourage you, take this time before this Sunday, and as we're going through this series, and then boldly, even after we're done with this series, continue to love that person, continue to pray for that person, because ultimately, God has given us the resources and the ability to be able to talk about those things and be trained to be able to help practically with those things. But it all starts with how Jesus moves in our hearts. And that's something that we want to be praying for everyone as they are either attending Brentwood or watching online or whatever it be, that they would see that Jesus is going to be their ultimate healer, and that he has given us the tools and resources to move forward and to practically, be able to take steps in victory over anxiety, depression, and suicide. And I also want to highlight real quick, if you are watching this video and you are struggling with suicidal thoughts right now, we encourage you to either, reach out either to Teresa, or more importantly, I would even say, like, the suicide hotline. We'll make sure that the number is here. If you are struggling with that right now, now is the time to not hide it at all. It's time to bring it into the light, talk about it, and start healing from that. But we are so excited for the series. It's going to be really, really, really I don't even know. I don't
Yeah,
even
it's
have a
gonna be
word for
great.
it. I don't
Yeah.
even have a word for it. But Teresa, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and thank you so much for watching this. We hope that it informed you, and we hope that it will encourage you and help you, figure out where to go to take next steps from here. But we hope to see you this Sunday as we start Even When It Hurts, and the remaining Sundays there. Invite friends, invite family, send the links to videos of those services to friends that that struggle with this, that may not be here in Virginia or in Lynchburg or anything like that. And we're just excited to see you on Sunday. So thanks for tuning in.